to another episode of Guru Talk. I am your host, Dave Palumbo, and today's topic is going to be diuretic use, the dangers, the correct usage, the proper way to administer diuretics prior to competition. And joining me today is probably one of the more knowledgeable people in this subject matter. As a matter of fact, someone who's actually saved people's lives on diuretics. Of course, it's our good friend, Milos Sarcev. Welcome back to the show.
Good to see you, Dave, and I'm happy to take a part of this particular subject because it is, as you said to me, super dangerous. People don't know what they're doing, and they can really lose their lives.
Yeah, there was a death of a competitor in Tampa a couple weeks ago, Milos Sarcev, who a couple days after the show passed, and a lot of people were speculating that it was due to diuretic usage. She had a heart attack. A lot of people don't realize, Milos, that all diuretics are not created equal, number one. Number two, a lot of times the deaths don't occur the day of the show. It's the day after, as these diuretics continue to keep working. And people sometimes even continue taking them because they think they don't want to hold water. Now, I think we should start off the conversation with explaining the different classes of diuretics and what they do. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's very good. I would start with this, and I'm going to limit myself to say I don't know what happened to this lady, and I don't want to be too harsh maybe on her coach or anybody who was advising her, but there's always proof in the pudding. If they found certain metabolites in her body, like spironolactone, high dosage of potassium-sparing diuretic, there's more than likely that she had a hyperkalemia and her heart stopped. And I was the first-hand witnessing in not one but two occasions with Mustafa Mohammed, who was exclusively using potassium-sparing aldactone high dosages. Once in 2004 Olympia, and shortly after in Amsterdam in the Grand Prix Tour. And I'm sure that you remember, and there was Jim Mannion, Steve Weinberger, Sean Ray, Kevin Lebroni, everybody at the time rushed to the hospital. And basically what happened is that Mustafa was using aldactone, potassium-sparing diuretic, which is one of three or one of five diuretic groups. So let's first just say, what are the groups? We have a potassium-sparing, which spare potassium in the blood. Then we have a thiazides, and then we have a loop diuretics. Loop, most aggressive, and they deplete everything. They deplete the sodium, potassium, water, everything. Is very, very harsh. They act very, very fast. And it's not really something that is commonly used, at least not here in the United States.
Right.
Thiazides are milder. I know that you, for example, love diazide, which is actually combination of thiazides and a potassium sparing. So it's combo of two, which I also think is the best. And we touched that subject. But the third one, potassium sparing, spironolactone, canrenone. There is a bunch of other stuff. Amiloride, triampirane. There's several of those. They spare the potassium, and then, especially if a person is carb loading and having so much high potassium carbohydrate foods, the potassium or kalium level is going to go through the roof. So what happened with Mustafa Mohammed, I would say, 2004, he overloaded, and his kalium was so high. Sean Ray called me from his room, said, Milos, please come to the room, let's see what's happening. He locked up, everything was locking up.
Right.
You could not actually even take his arm off his chest because his pecs were locked up. Like, oh my God. And when paramedics came, and this is what I want to say, it's commonly they would think dehydrated bodybuilder means hypokalemic. So they would give them electrolytes that also contain potassium, which can stop their heart. And I'm just going to say, I know that we talked once, but it's good for people to hear it. The paramedics were going to give him IV electrolytes. I stopped them. I did not allow it. And they were like, go away, you're interfering with an emergency medical procedure. This is life and death. I say, exactly. He is super high with the potassium. And I said, how do you know? I know. So when we went to the hospital in Vegas, and everybody, like I said, back in the office were Kevin Lebroni and Sean, and everybody came for support. doctor first came to me and said, like, sir, I heard that you're interfering with the emergency. So I asked him, are you going to test his potassium? Because I guarantee you he's hyperkalemic. 20 minutes later, he came out and said, oh, my God, you saved his life. I mean, really,
wow.
That's 2004.
Wow.
So
and no one knew that back then. You were way ahead of the curve back in 2004. But the knowledge we have today because of the internet is a lot different than back then. Back then, no one knew anything. It was like in hotel chemistry people used to do.
Yeah, back in 1996, they implemented diuretic testing in IBB.
Yeah.
So basically they gave us a list of, and I have here somewhere, actually, it's right there on the desk, on my calendar. I wrote all the diuretics from the list, and then I tried to find whatever is not on the list, and I found like 10 different ones. So in 97, when I won Canada Pro Show,
right,
I got the phone call from Wayne Demina, say, hey, Milos, I have bad news. Like, what? You failed the test. I said, it's impossible. Oh, yeah, but you tested positive for pyretinide. That was the Italian loop.
Right.
I said, okay, what is on the list? And then I said, oh, you're lucky. I said, okay, test me every time. I'm gonna get another one. There was like so many that were not on the list. But for potassium sparing, this is so dangerous. I'm gonna tell you, okay, if I ask you, who do you think is the best conditioned, driest athlete in bodybuilding of all time?
Andreas Munzer.
Andreas Munzer, no question. So I was friends with him, and back in '92, I asked him, like, man, can you really tell me your protocol?
Yeah.
And
by the way, Milos, let me just stop you. Say, you used to ask everyone for their protocol. You probably have a list of every single pro bodybuilder's protocol somewhere in your notebooks, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. And this is, but I want to say this because you agree with me, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
Andreas Munzer had that crazy dryness, like striation upon striation, bone dry. Well, he was using potassium loading and aldactone at the same time.
What? Wow.
Yes. And many Germans after. But at certain point, he will get like 10 milligrams of Lasix.
Oh. Did he understand that? Did he understand what he was doing? Or was it just by luck?
Say it again?
Did Munzer understand that he was lowering his potassium with the injectable Lasix, or was he just kind of gunshot and everything?
Yes. So as you know, aldactone saves the potassium.
Right.
And loop diuretic depletes it.
Right.
So instead of like Mustafa and also Mohammed Ben Aziza, I was actually in a room when he collapsed. That's another story. Like when potassium is super high, hyperkalemic, the thing that's going to help you is a loop diuretic, very quick. And as you know, there is oral version of Lasix or bumetanide or cyclopamide, furosemide, or there is injectable. Injectable in these instances will work instantly.
Right.
And this is how they really, in hospitals, they bring him, back down immediately.
Sure.
And I would say this also, because a week after the 2004 Olympia, we went to European Grand Prix Tour. I see Mustafa, and I wasn't working with him. He was just like friend, and, oh, you saved my life, you Milos, my brother. I said, okay, what are you using this time? Aldactone. I came to his room. There was so much dates, bananas, and all this stuff. Like, oh my God, no. Mustafa. So I told him, please, take a little bit of Lasix. And no, Milos, I want to qualify. And the same thing happened. He was already collapsing during finals.
Wow.
And Steve Weinberger looked at him, me, Chris Dim. And there was a banquet afterwards, but Chris and I said, okay, let's just swing by his room and see how he's doing. And Ronnie Coleman was in his room.
Uh-huh.
Mustafa, again, locked up, like he can't even
again, the same thing happened. The same thing.
Same thing happened, exactly. And I said, from Amsterdam came, and this time Steve Weinberger and myself went with the paramedics to the hospital, and then, they pushed it away. And interestingly, how they also, in Amsterdam, they pushed the potassium out, IV insulin and glucose.
Oh, right, insulin. Yeah, true. Insulin draws the potassium into the muscle, right?
Yeah, so that's what I did. So what I want to say, I don't know if instance of this lady that just passed away, God bless her soul, but there is a very high probability that if she had a heart attack, it was probably hyperkalemia, and it was probably high dosage of spironolactone, aldactone.
Yeah, and I want to just explain to this something. Now, for people who don't understand, potassium, the majority of potassium in your body should be inside the cells, okay, inside the muscle cells, inside your cells, not outside the cells. And the majority of your sodium should be outside your cells. That creates what's called the gradient, so that your cells can contract and the muscles contract. When there's too much potassium outside of the cells and in the bloodstream, that's known as hyperkalemia, too much potassium. And because of that, the muscles can't contract properly. When that happens, when the muscles in your body can't contract, they get stiff, like Milos noticed, Mustafa Mohammed. When it happens, however, in your heart stops and you die. Okay, it's one thing if your bicep it can't contract or relax. It's another thing when your heart can't do that. And so a lot of people think, oh, if I take potassium-sparing diuretics, in other words, diuretics that only cause the loss of sodium, I'm safe. I can take as many as I want of those. Because if I cramp, I'll just take some sodium in. No, but the problem is, if you build up too much potassium in your bloodstream, especially if you're taking in foods that have potassium in them, like bananas and other food, even potatoes have potassium in them, you build up an excessive amount of potassium in the bloodstream and you stop your heart. And I don't know why people continue to do this, Milos. I just don't think people understand the science of everything. The reason why Milos and I like Diazide is because Diazide has a potassium-losing diuretic and it has a potassium-sparing diuretic. So when you put them together, potassium doesn't go up and it doesn't go down. It stays even. The only variable that changes is sodium. So when you take Diazide, you lose sodium, that's it, and water. If you cramp or anything goes wrong, you eat sodium and it fixes the problem. It's a very simple solution. That's why I'm always extolling the use of Diazide. Now, if you took 25 milligrams of aldactone a day for a couple days, it probably wouldn't cause a problem. But I'm hearing totals, Milos, that people are taking 600 milligrams of aldactone a day. I mean, that's suicidal.
Yes, I was before even wondering why do they make 100 milligrams of aldactone? And yeah, in a certain heart conditions and in the hospitals they would need this kind of huge amounts, and it's like indicated up to like 600 milligrams a day. 400 to 600 milligrams would be maximum dosage. I used to always have a PDR and I look at the plasma half-life and elimination and all this stuff. But okay, the highest that I know in bodybuilding back in the 90s, all of us, including like Dorian and other guys who competed, would be 150 milligrams a day. But that was like in his case, he was exclusively taking aldactone.
Yeah.
Okay. And even this was the high dosage. Then of course you test it with less. And nowadays people take 12.5 or 25 micrograms twice a day. Yeah. For the next 2 or 3 days when you're maybe carb loading, because they want to block aldosterone a little bit to accumulate potassium. And then if you do have a insulin-driven carbohydrates, it could actually be beneficial, but a very low dosage. But still, if you go with the aldactone very high, you're going to be hyperkalemic, guarantee.
Yes.
And I've seen this happen with million guys. Let's just touch also Mumbo Benaziza, one of the best bodybuilders of all time, and I want to give him credit. The day when he won and day when he died, that was probably one of the best bodybuilders I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
92, Den Haag. I mean, he was incredible. Yes, but already during finals, he couldn't even walk out to accept the trophy, and there was a little bit irresponsibility from IBB at that time, Wayne D'Amelia. He says, oh, he'll be okay, just put him in a cab and let's drive back to Middle Harness, which is 1 hour away. And instead of taking him to the hospital, having him rehydrated, they actually sent a doctor. And Thierry Pastel told us when doctor came, he shoot him with a high potassium level electrolyte solution.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Killed him. They killed him, basically.
They kill him. They really
Yeah.
kill him. And I mean, I'm openly talking about this. Thierry Pastel was a witness. There was Porter Coachelle, Steve Brisbois, there was RQ Gurley, all of us right there. Of course, we all loved Momo. Momo was so likable.
Yeah.
And I tell you, 92, for example, at
Did you know what was done? I mean, because I don't think these other guys understood the dynamics like you did of all the drugs.
They didn't. But you see, like even Momo was asking me from country to country, we were going, what can he get in Italy? What can he get in, the different countries?
Right.
So he was mixing a lot. And there was, we use aldactazide in the United States, which is hydrochlorothiazide and spironolactone,
Right.
which is also like combination of what you like, thiazides and potassium sparing. Yeah. It's a version of it, like diuretic.
Right.
It's also potassium sparing. There are many different kinds. But then in each country, he would get something else. But it was all based on potassium sparing. And Benaziza, actually, the way he did it, I was traveling with him and in his room, and I've seen it. He would have like 20 pounds of apples, and he would grind them and make like applesauce.
Really?
Yeah, applesauce. If he wouldn't drink the actual water, that would be his carb loading thing.
Wow. Yeah. No water consumption.
Yeah, it's he had a little bit of normal chicken rice and stuff like that, but this was majority. And when you go shopping with the guys, and then somebody is buying 20 pounds of apples, for the love of God, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
But God bless you. So like when Pastel ran to the restaurant where we were all please. Come see Mohammed Mustafa.
How come everyone always came and got you, Milos?
What?
Every time someone was dying, they always came and got you. You noticed that? You were like the doctor.
They didn't come to me. This time they came to everybody. I mean, we really all rushed to the room, and I only saw. Benaziza was sitting in a chair.
Right.
He had feet in the cold water, and he was colored at the contest, but he was already completely white there.
Wow. And
at the one moment, it just stiffened up and fell down. Now, Porter Coachelle was paramedic.
Right.
And he basically told us, okay, open the windows, get the hell out of the room. And he started performing CPR.
Right.
Because he was certified in it. And we were all out and we called the paramedics. And I saw paramedics came in, but his body was pretty much lifeless. And they said that he died on the way to the hospital. So, for every bodybuilder competitor that is listening to me and Dave made this special edition, GuruTalk, to tell you the exact dangers. Don't think it's safe. There is many guys, even in California, I had a friend of mine, actually the gentleman that did my Colosseum logo, Russell Nevarovsky, his training partner died backstage also a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. At the John Lindsay show, one of the shows.
Oh, wow.
Steve, I forgot the name. Yes. And these things are happening around the world. And it could happen, you cannot guess. You have to know what you're doing. So if you're choosing to have potassium-sparing diuretic, be sure that you're going to probably be hyperkalemic, especially if you're taking high carbohydrate foods. Any carbohydrates you're going to take is loaded. Yep. And then especially if you take with the dates and bananas and oh my God. So that's one risk. As Dave prefers, and I know Dave, and I love your theory, you take diazide if needed, night before, morning of. Yep. This is really, people just think you have to. There is many ways you can dehydrate yourself naturally. But then if you choose something, then, be wise. If you're gonna do loop diuretics, like horrible, so aggressive, right? It's gonna deplete everything, and then you can also stop drinking. For example, if you're gonna take loop diuretics, you're supposed to keep drinking, and then you're supposed to replenish your electrolytes.
Right.
So if you're gonna choose to do it, there is a way to do it, but again, don't risk it. Any kind of muscle cramping, the dryness of muscle, like dehydration symptoms should be alarming. What now? And if you need to rehydrate, you see, like people, once they start dehydrating, And it's like, oh shit! Now I can't reintroduce the water.
Right.
They're afraid. Well, it must be reintroduced. This is how it is. Now, let's just talk. I mean, sorry.
I lost you for a second.
Somebody's calling me.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
When I talk how fast something works. Now, I used to really follow this plasma half-lives, and for hydrochlorothiazides, the part of the diazide, they'll say, hours and elimination is like 3.5 days.
Yeah, no, it lasts a long time. It lasts a long time, diazide. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You see, I had actually some doctors that suggest to many people to be heart healthy to take low dosage of hydrochlorothiazide, 12.5 milligrams every other or third day on a regular basis.
Right. Interesting.
So they're not really dangerous medicaments if you use them with a caution, right?
Right.
If you do have some water retention and some blood pressure issues, maybe a small dosage of hydrochlorothiazide could actually, very, very wise idea. But high dosage is a different story.
Look, I tell people, I like to make things as simple as possible. All these scenarios you laid out are brilliantly configured, and you obviously have a very great grasp and understanding of the dynamics of what are going on. This diuretic increases potassium. If you increase potassium, you have to watch out that you don't get a potassium overload. If you take a loop diuretic alone, you can lose potassium and go hypokalemic. Okay?
Yes.
To me, when I analyze a problem and I try to be a problem solver, I look for the simplest solution with the least variables. Diazide presents the least variables. There's one variable, sodium. Okay? You take a little, diazide the night before, maybe the morning before, the morning of the show. You can reintroduce sodium the day of the show to balance that loss of sodium. You've lost the water, you're dry. Why do you have to try to go do something extreme? The only time you have to do extreme stuff is when something's not working. In other words, let's say you get to the day before the show and you're a water balloon because you were flying or something like that, and you need something a little stronger or a little bit more, okay? That's the only time you have to go there. But if you're doing everything right and you're in shape, okay, you shouldn't be holding excessive amounts of fluid where you have to do anything extreme. There's no reason why you need to take 5 days of aldactone leading up to a show. So when people do these extreme things and I see these horrible things happen and people die or wind up in the hospital, I cringe because it's just not necessary. I don't know. And you know what? You know it, Milos. These gurus like to make these crazy concoctions of take this here and 4 days out, 5 days out, 7 days out. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to take this diuretic out. We're going to change it with this one because they want to make it seem like they're doing something special. They're earning their money, so to speak. And most of the time, it just screws things up and makes things dangerous. And I don't know why people do this, but we've given you guys a solution. If you use diazide, there's no risk of anything going wrong. You can fix the problem very simply by eating some sodium and drinking a little water. And you know what, Milos? Usually it's not a water issue. It's usually an electrolyte amount. So when you cramp, even on diazide, it's usually just because you've depleted too much sodium out. It's not that you're too dehydrated. So a lot of times just eating sodium, putting a little sodium on your food, salt on your food. I sometimes have guys put a teaspoon of salt, put it in their mouth and swig down an ounce or two of water with it to wash it down. And that solves the problem because that's the only variable that can be wrong.
Yes. Touch of salt would solve all the issues. Yeah. And I've been there before. The problem is, for people, if they're going to do this, a teaspoon of salt is a little bit too much. It's I did this one time with Armin Schultz, and he was the first guy that actually puked on the stage. Yeah, that was 2000, I think, 5. Yeah, because let me tell you this: if you had a food poisoning and they want to try to make you throw up, they would give you a shitload of salt, and it's going to make you.
Oh, they will, yeah.
So you have to go a little bit.
You might have to salt a rice cake with some peanut butter or something.
I would do this. I sprinkle And let's talk about this also. Back in the 90s also, and early 2000s, there was a lot of people that would stop sodium month before the show.
Oh, no, that's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. No, get this. I went to Dominican Republic in 2010, and, I've seen like a bunch of guys who are competing. They would start taking diuretics 1 month before.
What? Oh, my
For
God.
the love of God. Seriously. And
Crazy.
for I don't know what reason, this was accepted. Like, oh, yeah, you're contest.
Well, because they think that if you lose water, you're losing fat. They somehow combine the two together in their heads.
Yeah. So those are kind of dangerous. So moral of this story, really, Dave and I, RXMuscle, would like to. I'm a first example of a guy that competed 110 times. I did every diuretic in a book. Yes, a few times, I got myself in danger also for being a little stupid. I say, okay, I can maybe hold on to it. And no, a heart is a muscle that you don't want to fuck with. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
And like Dave said, it's one thing getting a cramp in your hamstring and the quads, and the other thing, in your heart. If you come to that point, it's probably going to be too late. And there are many wise things that Dave was saying. Diazide, which is Maxide, right? Or Moduretic,
right.
Another similar type, or even aldactazide, that's also aldactone and hydrochlorothiazide. There is a combination of thiazide and potassium sparing that could actually be very safe to use on small dosage, day before the show, morning of the show.
Yeah, I agree. And Milos, I really appreciate you filling us in on your experiences with the in-the-field diuretic usage, and of course, obviously, your extreme knowledge you have as well. And, these talks that we do are very important, and that's why I started GuruTalk, because I just don't want to see more people dying. It's so unnecessary and so unavoidable. So thank you for joining us, of course. And guys, that's going to take us to the end of another episode of GuruTalk. I'm Dave Palumbo for Milos Sarcev. We'll see you next time.